According to the Gnostics, humanity is not one species. It is three, and most people belong to the type that will never awaken. Not because they are incapable, but because they were designed that way. Built to consume, to obey, to never ask the questions that shatter the illusion. But if you're watching this now, if something pulled you here, the Gnostics would say you're not one of them. And that makes you dangerous. When the farmer discovered those ancient jars beneath the Egyptian desert in 1945, hidden for over 1,600 years, he had no idea what he had discovered. Inside these keyboard boxes are the Nag Hammadi texts, fragments of a worldview so radical that empires worked for centuries to destroy every trace of it. And among the most unsettling revelations hidden within these boxes was this: not all humans are created equal. According to the Gnostics, humanity exists in three distinct categories, three types of consciousness, three levels of spiritual potential, and that's the unsettling part. Only one of these types has any real chance of escaping the prison of this reality. The Gnostics didn't speak in terms of race, class, or intelligence. They spoke in terms of essence, of what animates you from within. They called these three types hylics, psychics, and pneumatics, and each operated at a completely different frequency of consciousness. Most people have never heard these terms. Most will go through their entire lives without ever wondering which category they belong to. But once you understand what the Gnostics were really saying, once you see the pattern, you can't ignore it. You start to recognize these three types everywhere. At your job, in your family, on crowded streets, and you begin to understand why the world works the way it does. Let's start with the first type, the hylics. The word comes from the Greek word hail, which means matter. Hylics are those whose entire existence is based on the material world. They are not evil, they are no less than human. But according to the Gnostics, they do not possess the divine mirror. They do not possess pneuma, the spirit that connects a soul to the underworld. Hylics live entirely through their senses, through appetite, through instinct, through the immediate gratification of physical desires. They are not reflective, they do not ask why. They simply exist within the flow of matter, consuming, reproducing, surviving, and then returning to dust. The Gnostics would say that the hylics are like automatons, not robots in the literal sense, but beings who go through life without ever truly waking up. They follow trends without questioning. They accept authority without resistance. They pursue pleasure and avoid pain, but they never stopped wondering what lies beyond the surface. For them, this world is all there is, and they are content with that. They don't feel the leap to transcendence, because there is nothing inside. They are searching for it. The demiurge, the false creator, designed it this way. They are the workers, the consumers, the foundation upon which the material system rests, and they will never rebel because rebellion requires an impact they cannot bear. This is not a judgment. It is simply the Gnostic observation of reality. The hylics are necessary for the system to function. Without them, the machinery of the material world would collapse. They built the cities. They power the factories. They film the reels that keep society moving. And they do this without ever questioning whether there is something more. In Gnostic cosmology, the hylics are the creation of the archons, not of the true source. They are beings of flesh animated by instinct, but they do not inhabit the fragment of eternity that defines the higher types. Now here is where it becomes more complex, because the second type, the psychics, seem to be awake. They seem spiritual. They believe in God. They practice religion. They speak of morality and ethics and higher purposes, but according to Gnosticism, psychics are still trapped. The word psychic comes from psyche, which means soul. Psychics possess a soul. They have an inner life. They experience guilt, hope, fear, and desire. They are capable of reflection. They ask questions, but their questions never go far enough. They accept the answers offered to them by external authorities, by princes, by scripture, through traditions, through structures that the demiurge himself established. The psychics are the believers. They follow the rules. They attend to services. They recite prayers. They think they are praying to the true God, but in reality, they are praying to the demiurge. They are trapped in the web of organized religion, convinced that obedience will save them. And the tragedy is that their obedience keeps them bound. The psychics are not asleep like the hylics, but they are dreaming. They mistake the dream for waking. They miss the false light. to the true source. They have the capacity for gnosis, for direct inner knowledge, but they exercise their spirituality. They have given power to intermediaries, to princes who claim to speak for God, scriptures that claim to hold the ultimate truth. And so they remain in the cycle, reincarnating, returning, believing that more time spent in devotion will finally bring him salvation. The Gnostics viewed psychics as tragic figures. They are so close to freedom, yet so far away. They have divine strength within them, but it's hidden beneath layers of programming, beneath accreditation systems that were designed by the archons to keep them docile. The psychics will argue over their rules. They will defend the institutions that imprison them, and they will look upon those who question these institutions with suspicion, with fear, even with hatred, because questioning the structure is threatening your own sense of identity, and that is something the psychic mind cannot tolerate. But then there's the third type, the pneumatic psychics. And this is where everything changes. Pneumatic psychics. The word pneumatic comes from the word pneuma, which means spirit or breath. Pneumatic psychics are those who carry the ultimate expression of divine endeavor. They are not animated by soul alone. They are animated by spirit, by the same substance that flows from the pleroma. The realm of true light is beyond the reach of the demiurge. Pneumatic psychics are rare. They always have been, throughout history. They have been the mystics, the heroes, the seekers, who could not accept the answers they were given. They are the ones who feel a deep and unforgettable knowing that something is wrong with this world, that the stories do not add up, that the authorities are lying, that there's a hidden truth beneath the eye surface, and they won't rest until they find it. Pneumatic psychics don't fit into the system. They try. Many of them spend years trying to belong, trying to believe what they are told to believe, trying to find meaning in structures that satisfy everyone else. But that never works. There's always friction, a feeling of displacement, a feeling that they are living in a world that wasn't designed for them. And eventually, they stop trying to fit in. They are transformed. They begin to seek gnosis, for direct and immediate knowledge of the divine. And once they experience this knowledge, once they experience even a glimpsing of truth beyond the surface, there is no turning back. The Gnostics believe that the pneumatic psychics are the greatest threat to the demiurge, because the pneumatic psychics cannot be controlled. You cannot compel them with pleasure as you can with the helics. You cannot pacify them with religion as you can with the psychics. They see through illusions. They recognize the archons for what they are. They understand that this world is a counterfeit, a shadow of something infinitely greater, and they refuse to displease the false god who claims dominion over it. That is why the Gnostics have always been persecuted. That is why the Gnostics themselves were captured, their texts burned, their teachers silenced, because a world full of awakened, pneumatic psychics is a world where the demiurge loses its power. So how do you know what type you are? The Gnostics would say that if you're asking the question, you're no longer a hylic. Hylics don't ask themselves these things. They don't watch videos like this. They don't seek hidden knowledge. They are content with the surface. So the question is really between psychic and numerical. And the distinction is subtle but crucial. The psychic seeks answers outside themselves. They look to teachers, to books, to systems. They want someone to tell them what is true. The numismatician, on the other hand, knows that truth cannot be given. It can only be remembered. It can only be experienced directly in the silence of your own consciousness. If you have spent your life feeling like an outsider, if you have questioned everything, even when it cost you relationships, even when it isolated you, the Gnostic would say that this is the pneumatic marker. If you have ever felt a leap towards something you cannot name, a longing for a home you have never seen, that is the divine mirror calling you back to the pleroma. If you've ever looked at the world and thought, this can't be all there is, you're hearing the laughter of your true origin, and the more you listen to that laughter, the more the illusion begins to crumble. But here's the challenge. The world is designed to suppress the pneumatic. Every system, every institution, every distraction is engineered to keep you from turning inward, to keep you busy, to keep you afraid, to keep you doubting your own knowledge. The archons understand that the pneumatic is the only real threat, so they work desperately to hide the mirror beneath layers of conditioning. They fill your mind with noise. They offer you endless entertainment, endless conflict, endless reasons to look outward instead of inward. And for many pneumatics, the mirror remains dormant for a whole while. They feel the friction but never understand why. They feel the erratic nature but never find the source. That is why the Gnostics emphasized gnosis above all else. Not faith, not obedience, but direct, experiential knowledge. The kind of knowledge that cannot be taught, only awakened. The kind of knowledge that dissolves prison the moment you see it. Because prison isn't made of matter, it's made of belief. It is made up of the stories you've been told about who you are, where you came from, and what you should do. And the moment you stop believing those stories, the moment you turn your attention inward and touch the mirror that the demiurge cannot reach, the walls begin to crumble. The Gnostics did not see the three types as a hierarchy of value. They saw them as a map of spiritual development. The helic is trapped in matter. The psychic is trapped in belief. The pneumatic is awakening to the truth. And while the Gnostics believed that not everyone carries the same potential, they also believed that the potential within the pneumatic is infinite. Because the pneumatic is not merely human, they are a fragment of the eternal, a child of the true source, a being never destined to be trapped in the first place. Now here's the part that confuses people. Because if the Gnostics are right, if there really are three types, then what does that mean for the helic? What does that mean for the psychics? Can they change? Can a helic become a psychic? Can a psychic become a pneumatic? The texts aren't entirely clear on this. Some Gnostic schools believed that the types were fixed, determined at the moment of creation. Others believed that the asparo could be awakened in anyone, given the right conditions. But what they all agreed on was this: most will never awaken, not because they can't, but because they won't. Because awakening requires something most people are unwilling to do. It requires letting go of everything you've been told. It requires facing the void. It requires being alone, and most people would rather stay asleep than face that kind of solitude. Most people would rather remain in the comfort of the known, even if the known is a lie, than venture into the unknown in search of the truth. This is not weakness. It's simply the nature of the system. The demiurge built a world where awakening is the most difficult path, where every force pushes you back into sleep, where comfort, distraction, fear, and social pressure all conspire to keep the asparo hidden. And for the helico, there is no asparo to hide. They are at peace in the material world because they belong to it completely. But if you're watching this, if you've made it this far, the Gnostics would say you're not a helic. You might be a psychic on the verge of awakening. You might be a pneumatic who has forgotten, but is beginning to remember. In any case, something inside you is stirring. Something is pulling you toward the truth. And this pull is no accident. It is the divine spirit recognizing itself. It is the fragment of eternity within you, calling to the source from which it came. And once that call begins, it does not stop. It only grows taller. So, what do you do with this knowledge? How do you shift from the psychic to the numerological? How do you awaken the spark? The Gnostics would say it begins with silence, with turning off the noise, with stepping away from authorities, from scriptures, from teachers who claim to have the answers. It begins with sitting in silence and asking, who am I beyond the roles I play? Who am I beyond the name I was given? Who am I beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the thoughts? And in that silence, if you listen deeply enough, you will hear the answer. Not in words, but in presence. Not as information, but as recognition. You will remember what you have always known, that you are not of this world, that you are a remnant of the eternal, temporarily trapped in flesh, but never truly connected to it. And when that realization occurs, when the Gnostic awakens, everything changes. You stop seeking salvation from the outside. You stop waiting for permission. You stop fearing death, because you recognize that death is just another illusion of the demiurge. You see the archons for what they are, not all-powerful gods but parasites, feeding on ignorance. And the moment you stop feeding them, the moment you hide your energy from fear, distraction, and false belief, their power over you dissolves, because they were never real. They were only ever as real as you believed them to be. So what kind of person are you? If you've made it to the end of this video, if these words resonated somewhere deep within you, then you already know the answer. Helics never ask questions. Psychics rarely delve that deeply. But pneumatics recognize the truth when they hear it. Not because someone told them it was true, but because something inside them remembers. And that memory is the first step towards freedom. The Gnostics kept these teachings hidden for a reason. They knew that one day those who carry the burden would find them, and when they did, the awakening would begin. If this exploration for Gnostic wisdom has opened something within you, then you are part of a rare group of seekers who refuse to accept surface answers. The journey doesn't end here. There are deeper mysteries waiting to be discovered. Ancient truths that the Archons have worked for centuries to hide. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next revelation. Hit the like button if this video resonated with your inner knowledge, and leave a comment below. Tell me what type you believe you are and if you felt the leap of divine spirit calling you home, because every awakened soul strengthens the collective light, and the demiurge fears nothing more than that.